Back at Dayton Hamvention this year, 2024, Icom released a X60 model new radio. Well, today they've finally revealed what that is at the Toyko Hamfair. Literally in the last hour or so, they've released this, and it can be revealed that this is it. This is the Icom IC-7760. It is the 60th anniversary model. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through some of the features. They've already released all of this information out there already. They've released a brochure and all of the specs and features, which is really good. I love this, that we get all of the information on release, which is fantastic. There's been some speculation over the last couple of months about what it could be, but finally all has been revealed. And we can also reveal later on, you'll see that on the screen share there, that there is a bit of a blurred section that is the suggested retail price. And we're going to go through what that will be, but stick around for that because that's coming up. So what is it? Well, the IC-7760, this is a HF 50 meg radio, SSB, CW, RTTY, PSK31-63, AM, FM. It does 200 watts. It is a 200 watt transceiver. So this is unique because it is a two-piece configuration that they're calling it, consisting of this controller here and an RF deck here at the back. So we think about the Icom IC-905 we've seen this with, that they've now shifted that into the HF space, and they've decided to develop this out to HF so that you can have a remote head and you can have the RF deck somewhere else. And there is one key difference between this and the 905, which I really like, and they've updated, and we'll go through that too. So yes, HF, they're calling it the IC-7760. As I was going through this information and researching it, there's a lot of reference to the IC-7610. I don't believe that this is a replacement for the IC-7610 because the 7610 hasn't been discontinued. It's still being made. It's still for sale. I've got one here in my shack. I think that this is just some improvements that they've made on the 7610, and this is marketed towards a specific subset of people who would like this radio over the 7610. So there's also some images we'll just see there. So that's the larger image that we've got of the RF deck and the control head. There's a couple of other more promo images here too. There is also a couple of images, so we'll just have a quick look here. That's the front of the radio. So we've got all of the same sort of look and feel of the this generation of Icom, I guess you could call it. There's the main 7-inch here touchscreen here in the front, which almost looks exactly identical to the 7610. But then there's also this sub display here. I think it's about 2.4-inch sub display, and this plays a really important role actually. This sub display in this radio. You've got all of your other functionality here as well. So we'll go through that. The rear of the controller. So we've got a LAN port here, which has RF deck labeled. We have an external display. Again, it's DVI. We've gone through why they don't use HDMI, licensing, all that sort of stuff. Display port. You can use a display port to HDMI adapter. That's what I do. If you want HDMI out, that's what you get. Don't know the resolution. I tried to find what the resolution was and I couldn't find it. So if anyone knows or they've seen it in the spec somewhere, then please put it in the comments below. I found this image interesting too. So this is called the RC-7760, but the serial number, I think, is at 105 or 106. So it looks like they've made maybe a couple of these already, or before they took the promo images at least, unless they started at 100. USB out, you've got all of your I/O stuff here, and you've also got a DC in jack too. So completely remotable. This is the front of the RF deck, what it looks like. Very sleek, very modern design. Not a lot to really see on the front, but on the back is where all the action happens. So it's got 4 antenna ports. They're all SO239s. The 7610 has 2. They've doubled that. It now has 4, which is a DX's dream. If you've got a Yagi or Yagi wire antenna, multiple Yagis, whatever, different bands, different antennas, you can go in here and you can pop them in to one of the 4 antenna ports. There's a transverter BNC here. There are 2 receive antenna ports, the in and the out, same as the 7610. Reference in, they've kept, which is good to see. I like to see that. 10 megahertz reference in, so you can frequency lock it. The standard Icom tuner port to interface to the external tuners. There's a controller LAN port here. There's a LAN port here. There's all your INO stuff in and out. And it also has a power supply built in. So there's our IEC connector there. So you don't need any extra power supply, which is fantastic. So that's the RF deck. There's a lot of promotional imagery here with the PW2, the Icom power amplifier sitting in here, and there's the ICPW2 controller as well. So they're intending that you may want to use this with the external power amp too. So looking at this image just gives me Flex vibes. It just looks like the front of a Flex radio. So I think that's what they're trying to go for here, Icom. They're trying to move into this remote space and build upon what they've done with the 905. So there are a ton of features here. I'm going to skim through them as we go through some of the main ones. So they're talking about here, this is a bit of an overview of what the radio is, but it's covered below. So I'm going to just sort of skip down a little bit quicker. Again, they mentioned the 7610 here. Digital pre-distortion is in this radio, which is good, and they've improved on that. Now, there was a couple of things that confused me a little bit here. I read this first bit talking about the controller and the RF deck. The controller cable included is 3 meters long, and if you use a commercially available cable, which is up to 100 meters or less, Ethernet cable, you can install the RF deck in an even more remote location. Now, when I first read this, I thought, okay, you're going to be connecting your controller to the RF deck with a cable, and you're limited to that 100 meters. That's what you got to have a cable between the two. Then I sort of scrolled down here, and that's actually not the case. So it does support remote operation via the home LAN connection. So you can see the diagram here of the front controller with a cable going into a switch or your local network, and then you've also got the RF deck here also connected to your local network, and then you've got your antenna out, which is great because the 905 you couldn't do that. The 905 you needed to connect your remote head to the sorry, not your remote head, your control head to the remote section of the radio via a cable. You couldn't do it via the home network, but they've done that in the 7760, which is good. So the controller and RF deck can be connected via a home LAN wired. This allows for greater flexibility in where you place the RF deck. In addition, because it is a simple configuration, does not require a computer, you can operate in your shack, your study, as long as you have a LAN connection. So it doesn't support Wi-Fi. That is the only issue. Inbuilt, it doesn't support Wi-Fi. You could use an Ethernet to Wi-Fi bridge if you really wanted to do that. However, there are some issues, I think, in the design where they've adopted they require low latency to the RF between the controller and the RF deck. So it's recommended to just do it over a LAN connection wherever you can. So in any case, I think that's good. They've done a LAN connection so that you don't require just that single cable to connect the two. You've got the flexibility of using your home network. And the other thing is you could also replace this cable if you have your RF deck, say, at the other end of your property. Maybe you've got some land and you want to put your RF deck away from your house. You could go and put it hundreds and hundreds of meters away, put a point-to-point link between the two, as long as it's low latency, which most of them are. You could get a ubiquity point-to-point link, and then you could have your RF deck located out somewhere where it's nice and quiet, and you could still operate this at your home network at home. So that's just an idea. So 2 displays. So you've got the 7-inch display, which is touch, and you've also got your 2.4-inch sub display, which I mentioned, which is also, they're both touchscreen. So the main display shows all the information necessary for operation, main subband, etc. And you can select different meters and all this sort of stuff that it's talking about here. So there's a picture of it. You can tap on it. Before, on the 7610, I think you tap once and you scroll through all of the meters. It appears here that you get a little drop-down box now, which is good. They've improved that, so you can go in and you can select what you prefer to see. This is the layout, again, is very, very similar to the 7610. It's pretty much exactly the same. So the sub-display, this is where some cool stuff happens. It says, in addition, the 2.4-inch sub-display can display filter effects, a multimeter, and a band stacking register. Furthermore, the filter effect screen can display the signal within the passband of the IF filter and the shape of the IF filter superimposed on each other. This makes it possible to visually check the effects of twin, PBT, manual notch, etc. The improved visibility of information improves operability and enables smooth operation. So you can see here that on this sub-display, there's a notch filter that's inserted here, and you can actually see it with this N, this arrow, and you can see how it's been taken out. So if you have any interference or any issues nearby, you can move this and you can visually see. So if, say, you've got a carrier sitting here somewhere, you can move your notch directly over that, and you can see when it arrives over the top of the signal and you notch it out, which I think is really awesome. You can also turn that into the sub-display of this multimeter, which this is the way I like to run my 7610. I have the power output, ALC, everything. I like to see all my meters running at once so that I can see if anything's wrong, or I can check my SWR while I'm transmitting, or the ALC, or anything. So I like this mode of operation. And then you can also change your bands here too. So you can, rather than, didn't check, does the front of the display, okay, so they've done away with the buttons, the frequency changing, the band changing buttons, and they've basically turned that into a digital button band stacking register. So they've changed that from the 7610. DIGI-SEL can be used in conjunction with a preamp. It improves sensitivity while eliminating unwanted signals, and it is also effective in avoiding OVF, the dreaded OVF light. So that'll be handy for those that love to go on about Icoms and their dreaded OVF light and OVF issues. So there's talking a little bit there about the automatic pre-selector in each of the main and sub bands, being able to filter out those adjacent signals on medium wave, short wave. In previous models, the 7851, 7610, the DIGI-SEL was placed closer to the antenna than the preamp. In this case, since the DIGI-SEL has an extremely narrow bandwidth, turning on the preamp after the DIGI-SEL does not improve the reception sensitivity in terms of noise figure. And the specifications mean that the DIGI-SEL and the preamp cannot be used together. Noise figure is very important in any receiver, so they've thought about this. Therefore, in the 7610, when the preamp is off, the DIGI-SEL operates on the antenna side like the conventional model. And when the preamp is on, the DIGI-SEL operates behind the preamp. This allows the DIGI-SEL and the preamp to be used together, preventing interference and suppression caused by strong out-of-band signals while improving reception sensitivity. So you can see there that that's what they're trying to show there. There's the DIGI-SEL. When it's turned off, when the preamp's turned off, it's sitting here right at the antenna before the bandpass filter and before the A to D conversion. And then when it's on and you turn the preamp on, it moves over here. So it's past the filtering, past the preamp, and it's sitting down here. So you have this filtering here to stop some of those out-of-band signals from interfering there. And they've got this comparison table here talking about that too. Moving on, so this is the bit which was talking about, I mentioned about over the LAN and having low latency. So it says here that the RF sampling method converts the RF signal directly into a digital signal and then processes the signal in an FPGA. In addition, by placing DSP specialized for audio signal processing on both the RF deck and the controller, we've been able to minimize delays in home LAN environments whilst also handling complex audio path switching due to the inputs and outputs of various interfaces. So I read that as they've been able to minimize the delays, but you still want to minimize the delay by having a low latency connection between the two. And here's a bit of a block diagram, and they've obviously some photos there of the DSP and FPGA chips too. So full power and full duty with 200 watts output. So the PA uses 450 watt class 65 volt LDMOS FETs, and in combination with a large heatsink and 4 cooling fans, it achieves 200 watts and full duty specs. So it says here with 100 volts input, ambient temperature 25 degrees, it can output 200 watts and transmit continuously for an hour. So it's full duty cycle. Like, that is awesome. I haven't seen that. You worry about running digital modes, for instance. If you run large amounts of power on digital modes, or you're required to run large amounts of power on digital modes, for instance, let's not get into that topic about whether you should or not. I'm going to use the example of 6 meters. You require large powers to be able to make the contact, but it can transmit continuously for an hour. So at those specifications, so full duty specs, which is awesome, which is a great change in the design. And look at the massive heatsink; it's huge on this thing. So I guess that's one of the advantages of placing the RF deck away from the controller, is you can make it larger. You don't have to worry about all the other circuitry to actually control the thing. You can space that out somewhere else, and you can put such a larger heatsink in the RF deck. So that's good. Digital pre-distortion. So the 7610 has DPD. The 7760 also has it. They've improved on this. So you can see here that there's a 7300 screenshot of the DPD. And of course, it says here that this works in combination with the IC PW2 as well. There is a 15 division bandpass filter. So it says adoption of 15 division bandpass filter, amateur HF bands are covered with 11 divisions. So conventional models such as the 7610 covered in the HF band from 1.8 to 30 megs with a 9-division bandpass filter, but the 7760 divides it into 11. In addition, by adopting filters with sharp characteristics specialized for each amateur band, it is possible to eliminate unnecessary radio waves, interference I'd say, outside the band, and it has become possible to effectively suppress A to D converter overflow. So that's very familiar. Looks like the X60 board. So this is the characteristics which I found very interesting, comparing the 7610 to the 7760. And you'll notice here with the 7610, look at 1.8 megs sort of goes up here, and then it sort of comes down here and gradually goes off. Here they roll it off a lot more. So they've got here 1.8 megs, it rolls down, and then there's a sharp cutoff. Similarly, 80 meters, quite wide, but 7 megs, and they've got these sharper roll-offs on the bands. So they've improved the bandpass filtering in here to have them a bit more sharper to eliminate interference, out-of-band interference. This radio has dual watch, dual speakers as well. So 2 identical receivers in the main and the sub-band. They're both independent of each other, so and they've both got the same performance as well. So you can listen to 2 different signals. You can listen to the same signal but on different antennas. You can listen in left and right speakers. There's a lot of flexibility with this, so it's really handy for working weak signal. There's dual spectrum scope, and they've improved on this a little bit too. You can see here that they've got 2 dual spectrum scopes, a top and a bottom here for the different bands. So they've got here, there's the top band is 40 meters, bottom band on the sub band is 20 meters. It also, where was that? Oh, here, it is also equipped with a scroll mode that allows you to seamlessly view a wide band of more than 1 meg. So you can also, with the waterfall display, check the amplitude of the frequency spectrum in chronological order. You can see weak signals that are difficult to distinguish with just the spectrum scope, so you'll not miss the weak DX signal, and you'll increase the possibility of communication. So you've got the dual up down here, you've got the dual here, and you've got the enlarged display here. So I'm glad that they've kept this waterfall. I use my waterfall on my 7610 all the time, and I can see all of these weak signals. It makes it so much easier to operate. There's the audio scope function as well, so they've kept that in pretty much the same as the previous models. There's some automatic contesting here for CW and RTTY, which basically has a pre-registered memory and it counts up sequentially from each contact, I guess, that you make from one. So that's might be handy as well. There's FT8 presets in here too. So you can also write different other presets as well. So not just FT8, but it says here that it makes it possible to support SSTV, but other digital modes in the future. So you can set those accordingly. There's a new design antenna tuner. I couldn't see, I was looking through the specs and I might have missed it, but I couldn't see what the tuning range of it was, but I'm assuming it's a 3-to-1 tuner, the same as other models. Compatible with the RC28 on the sub-band if you want to use that. The multi-dial, which we've all come to know and love, with the menu here on the right-hand side, still kept. There is an IQ out for tapping off for an SDR, so you can use that still. That is still on the 7760. The external display, which we mentioned, I couldn't find the resolution for that. SD card. Remote operation is going to be with RSBA1. I hope that with RSBA1 that they do a bit more of a upgrade of this software so that it looks a little bit more user-friendly. It kind of looks a little bit old. It was nice when, it first come out and you could do all the remote operation stuff and, it sort of had a bit of a feel, but it would be good if they could sort of work on this a little bit to make it a little bit more user-friendly. It would be cool if they made the front of if they could make different radios. So like if you brought up RSBA1 and you selected, say, the 7760, it would bring up the control head, and you literally, that's what you have in front of you, is an emulated version of the front control head, and you just click the buttons as if you were operating the radio right in front of you. That would be pretty cool. Of course, you'd have to do that for every single model, which would be a bit of a pain graphically. It's probably easier to use just this one graphics panel, but yeah, anyway. So there's all this other information here if you want to pause on the video to view any of it. All of these other features and specs, which I think are all mainly stuff that's been built on from the previous 7610. Under specifications, I'll do the same here. There wasn't anything else that I could see that didn't already stand out that we'd already covered. So it's good to see, though, that all of this has been published, and I'm sure that there'll be more information later. The weight of the RF deck is 15.8 kilos. It's not light. It is heavy, and that is obviously because it can be placed in a location where you don't need to worry about it too much, and obviously that big chunky heatsink would be a big part of that. The controller, 2.3 kilos, not too bad. So yeah, SSB, CW, FM, RTTY, PSK, 200 watts, AM, 25 watts, and all of our other specs here. Here's some of the receiving specs with the sensitivities. So go ahead and pause the video if you want to read through those. Here's the selectivities that they've got as well. And that's pretty much the rest of the specs that I found. Some of the options here, there is the hand mics, desktop mics. So they've all got on the front panel of the 7760 the same 8-pin Icom mic connector. So pretty much compatible with all of these other accessories, the AH730. There is a promotional PDF, which has been released. It is all in Japanese. I can't find an English version yet. I think the English version is coming. Pretty much goes through everything that we've already covered today in the product information page. So I don't think that there is anything else additional in here. So there is that too. Now, the big question is suggested retail price. So I'm going to go ahead and reveal that is the suggested retail price, 877,800 yen. So we did a bit of a conversion. The suggested retail price in US dollars is $6,082. $6,082 suggested price. In British pound, it is 4,601 British pounds. And in Australian dollars, it is 8,954 Australian dollars. So there's the suggested price. Again, suggested retail price is interesting because Icom generally release that, and then sometimes it can be a little bit cheaper when it gets to retailers. But anyway, that's what they've listed. Good on Icom for actually putting a suggested retail price, because it's always the same question all the time. People are like, how much is it going to cost? This is what they suggest. Could be higher, could be lower. Don't know, but that's what Icom have said. Icom Japan have said. Now, if you want to see more about the guts of the radio and the initial reveal, then there are some links over here to the X60 and also some of the other Icom reviews that I've done. I use Icom here in the shack. You can see those over here as well.